for the couple of events that are live already. I'll put that in the chat in case you're interested in signing up. Otherwise, keep an eye in your email for the registration for the rest of the events. And then, of course, please keep in touch with us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And then if you ever want to connect directly with us, feel free to send us an email as well. And now I would like to welcome our moderator for the evening, Dr. Joe Lubig, who is the Associate Dean and Director of Education, Leadership, and Public Service here at NMU. Dr. Lubig is also an NMU alumnus who earned a bachelor's degree in 1991 and an MAE in 2000. Welcome, Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, Kylie, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, pretty excited. Hope that there's a lot of teacher cats out there joining us. So start warming up your questions. We want to engage with you. We have an awesome panel of human beings with us, and we'll introduce them one at a time here, or have them introduce themselves. First up, we have Andrea Ballard. She graduated from her education specialist program while also completing the principalship licensure piece. So she was doing all that and leading her school, which is the North Star Montessori Academy in Marquette. Andrea, what do we need to know about you? What do you want to tell us?
Hi, Joe. Thanks a lot. Well, as you said, I'm Andrea Ballard. I'm the current superintendent and principal at North Star Montessori Academy. I have been with the school for about 7 years now. I'm originally from downstate, but I found my way up here as fast as I could, and I love it. I have worked in almost every position there is within a school. I started as a teacher assistant, then went to paraprofessional, then teacher, consultant, principal, and now a dual role of superintendent and principal. And so I feel like doing all of those jobs has given me a great understanding of what goes into the school and how it functions.
Oh, Andrea, thank you so much. All right. Next up in the lineup, this is our spring training, right? We have Cameron Bancroft. And Cameron is a bachelor's degree in 2013. I know he's working on or is finished, I think, an ed tech master's from another institution. And he's at Bothwell Middle School in Marquette. And I have to tell you, not only was he in our program, but I have firsthand knowledge of Mr. Bancroft because we were fortunate enough to have him as a teacher in our family for my son, which was a great experience for all of us. So Cam, what do we need to know about you?
Yeah, so I joined kind of the NMU family when I graduated in 2013. I can't speak highly enough of the education program at NMU. I've gone to, as you say, a different institution for my master's, but just for lack of choice here at NMU, I'd rather go through NMU. Yeah, so I made my way up here for college. I married my wife up here, and she actually had you as a teacher there, Dr. Lubig. So we have some reciprocation there in the family. And I've been at Bothwell Middle School with MAPS for, this is my 8th year, and MAPS has been an amazing school district to work for. I can't say that I've had a bad administrator or a bad really experience that would stand out. So it's just been a very positive experience, and I love where I work and I love what I do.
Oh, thanks, Cameron. That's awesome. Yeah, that's right. So Kimberly doesn't owe me any assignments. I did check her 7th and 8th grade file. We're good to go. Okay.
Yeah, I heard that some things might have gotten lost here or there.
Okay. Dynamite. Hey, and then to all of our alumni, current students, and faculty and staff and friends that are on, one of the neatest things I think about our program is that when you student teach, you can really student teach anywhere in the world. The pandemic's put a little clamp on that for us to go international, but Hannah Moberg is student teaching out in Colorado, and she's elementary education mathematics, and she's amazing. And she took this on, and she headed west, and she's absolutely crushing it out in her student teaching experience. And I know, Hannah, because I was talking to Dr. Kennedy today a little bit about how you're doing. So Hannah, what do you want to tell us about your experience at NMU to introduce yourself?
Well, I will echo what the other panelists have said that I've only had great things to say about the education program and my experiences at NMU. I've made great connections. I'm from Escanaba, born and raised in the UP, and I decided with my student teaching to take what NMU had given me and bring it somewhere else. So I'm bringing a new perspective from the UP to Colorado, and I'm getting a new perspective of how school in Colorado works compared to my original from the UP. So I'm learning a lot, but I'm having a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Thanks, Hannah. So one of the questions we thought we would address is to ask each of the panelists opportunities that have sprung from relationships while formed at NMU. And one of the things, actually we had a nice study group today, we're talking about our online graduate courses and really looking at how we can dig into our courses to make sure we're doing learner to learner experiences, learner to professor, and learner to material. And I know all those things happen in our programs, but I also think it's what Cameron was discussing is the connection to schools in all of the clinical sites that we use locally. So does anybody want to tell us about the relationship building at NMU and how that's maybe helping you or how you've built upon that in your current position or experience?
I can start off. I can start off kind of basically by saying that when I went through the education program, I didn't know where I was going to end up for schools, but I come from a small town community, much smaller than Marquette here, but just having the kind of the small town feel, I knew this was someplace that I wanted to go. And then making those connections, really that with the NMU, the education program helped me foster. I got inroads with the MAPS district. I was able to go right in from student teaching to long-term sub to hired in the position I have today. And now it's come full circle where I'm working side by side with the professors that I once had in classrooms. And as you stated, Dr. Lubig, I've had many of my former professors' kids in my classroom at this point, which is a really exciting opportunity, scary, but a really exciting opportunity that we can see that those connections come full circle. And our little community up here isn't so little when you start thinking about that network that's being made.
That's awesome. Yeah, so Andrea, I was just going to say, yeah, let's go to you.
I just want to, piggyback on what Cameron said a little bit. I completely agree. The network and the community and the relationships that you build through the NMU program will serve you for years to come. As someone new in the community and not familiar with anyone here, I was really able to make a lot of connections and utilize all of those connections within my school, and not only just my own education, but the education to the students that I was working with. So it was a very seamless process, and it was so incredible.
Yeah, I can jump right onto that too. So since I moved out, that's something that NMU has allowed me to do. So now I have a relationship here in Colorado, but I also still have that same network going on. It's just 1,000 miles across the way. I find myself emailing my professors or teachers that I was like in their classroom for observations with, being like, hey, what would you do for this, and this, or the other? And it's not like oh, should I email them? Is this okay? It's like we were able to foster those relationships and have those connections, so that I think that if I emailed anyone that I've interacted with in the past 4 years, they would have something to say with open arms. So
Yeah.
It's like big in the sense that I have so many connections, but just like everyone said, it's that small town feel. We're still so close knit that you're kind of almost like family, and that's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, Hannah. And so I keep thinking of reflecting on our programs, and because I get to see everything, right? And I get to see what all the students are doing, all the faculty, all of our partners, it's in the staff. And it is really impressive when you start going through and looking at feedback. And again, I'll lean on our faculty who, we're just sharing kind of Cameron's story for yet another student who is teaching in Idaho, just got long-term sub position or is hired for the fall. I might be messing that, but I know she's hired for the fall in a full-time position out in Idaho. And I think one of the things that I keep thinking about is how well we're preparing you, but we can't do that if you're not an authentic partner. And I guess our starting point is you have to do 51% of the work at least to start, and then we go from there. And I just think of the trust it takes and the confidence you have to have in yourselves for us to say to you, your student teaching out of the area, your principal that you're with is also going to be your university supervisor. I mean, you can't hide from that. You can't hide anything from the kids, but you also can't hide anything from the people who are evaluating you, and that's a potential employer. So that's really powerful, right? And John Van Duzen put in a comment, thanks, John, and he put exporting talent, exclamation point. And that's exactly it. And I guess the premise of our program is, are we confident that you could teach our own children, your own children, children of the friends and family that you live next door to and have to look at in aisle 5 of Econo Foods on a daily basis, right? Are we that confident, right? So that relationship building really matters. So here we are in Pandemica America, in the public schools, in the charter schools, in private schools. And how have you all used relationship building or your learning to maybe take that next scary step to do something that was unfamiliar to help your students? Or what have you borrowed from your previous practice or development to help your students navigate like what's going on right now in these learning spaces?
Can start and speak to that a little bit. You know, I truly believe that relationships are the foundation of any educational program, and a strong relationship will help you to connect with children, families, any of your stakeholders within your school. And so in this day and age, when there are so many unknowns and so many fears in our families and our children, relationships really have to come first. Our kids will be okay. They will. Academically, right now, we need to focus a little bit more on those relationships, that social, emotional, some of those practices that just support the whole child. And I think there are a lot of things that were new this year for educators and administrators with all of the constraints that we had. But there are a lot of things that we put into place this year that we're all kind of like, yeah, that was a good idea. That worked for us. We're going to keep doing that. And so really being able to think outside the box and being open and positive and building those relationships has really gotten us through and provided us with that strong connection to our families and our kids.
Andrea, I 100% agree with you. And I was in a previous conversation about all these little niches that we've created, and maybe the systems that we have in place aren't ideal for everyone. But what we've found is that we've advanced education in one short year by, I don't know how many years going forward. You know, we've made sure that all the devices work at home, and we've solved internet issues, and we've come up with lessons that can not only be applied in classrooms, but you can do things at home, which really then support, every single one of my kids right now, they can not only hear the lesson in class live, but then if they get home, they can watch the video directions again. And so there's a lot of things here that I think after this year has calm down a bit, and we look back and we go, you know what, maybe that wasn't best practice, we can throw that out the window, but this is a crown jewel, and it worked for a lot of kids. So why haven't we been doing this in the past? I mean, we can even look at some things like special ed accommodations, where if I told you last year that I was going to record every single one of my lessons and have it posted, people would be like bowing down, like, absolutely, that would be great for a lot of the accommodations being met. And guess what? That's happened this year. So maybe that is something that we can keep going forward. And we have created this vast library of knowledge for an entire school year that we can now go back and kind of tweak. So there's a ton of positives that have come out of this.
Thanks, Cameron. Hannah, how's it sorting itself out in Colorado?
It is sorting itself out. I would say the same things though. I'm seeing education in a brand new light. I'm working in a middle school right now, middle school math, and we flipped our classroom, which is something I know is not brand new, but it's something that I would never have thought to do. And it's kind of like Cameron said, if you would have asked me if I would record every single math lesson and post it for them to watch, no, I'm not going to do that. That would have been my answer like 3 months ago. We never do anything else because it does that same thing. It gives those accommodations. It gives chances to rewatch things. You can pause, copy down exactly what I said if you need to. And I'm just seeing things completely differently. And I think the COVID year for me, student teaching in the COVID year, I think that this has given me so many tools. It was so scary, but to be able to walk in and not only be in a COVID year, but now I've moved across the country. I don't know anyone. My first thought was also, it has to be relationships. We're all going through it. I have to bond with these kids. And so before I even attempted to have us get to know each other as student and teacher, I had us get to know each other as we're just people sharing a space. And that has allowed us to grow so much. And it's especially important now because like everyone's struggling, including the kids. But if it's so beneficial now I'm like, now this has to be my first step, always, 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 always. So I've learned just a ton, being uncomfortable and just making sure you make uncomfortable things comfortable somehow.
Well, and isn't that part of it, Hannah, is it's that zone of proximal development, right? Like, let's go a little bit beyond where we are right now for ourselves, for the students, right? For the families. And that's where the growth comes in, right? So that's pretty cool. Hey, before we move on, I want to, we're not supposed to single people out, but I'm going to. Lindsay Mcvicker joined us, and I have to tell you, Lindsay is one of the folks that I see a lot of Facebook posts from, and she is always so positive and excited about the early childhood programs she works in northern lower Michigan. So Lindsay, thanks for posting out such positive things about where you work. That's so awesome to see. And then Taylor Mackey, not supposed to have favorites from class, but thanks. You're one of my favorites. So it's good to see that you're online also, Taylor. Thank you so much. Right. So NMU has a lot of resources. We have access to research, internships, student teach anywhere in the world. I think, well, I know our candidates are embedded in local schools. They get to be an authentic part of what's happening in the schools. And I know that's a little stressful at first and it keeps scaling up. Bothwell gives us the whole 7th grade for an entire week to teach. We've got Montessori academies coming over in May with another, 300 and some students from around the state, from the Bawating Charter School in the Sioux and Natawash in Escanaba, and some charters from downstate, which is exciting. And then Hannah, we've got the Seaborg Mass Science Center. We've got all these resources. How did you all use connections or relationships with those resources and those people while you were here? Or how are you using them now to make your practice better, or to sustain what you're doing, or to engage the students that you have?
I would say, again, it's just that constant resource to be able to reach out at any point and be like, hey, Renee in the Seaborg Center, do you have something for dividing fractions? Do you have something that I could do for some kind of virtual field trip for this or this in my science class? And you can just reach out, and they have so many things for you. And every department has that. So it's just, again, for me, it's that constant ability to be able to reach out and have a plethora of options for resources for you to take advantage of.
That's awesome, Hannah, because I'll give a shout out to Renee Jewett, Chris Standerford, And then Kim Smith isn't working in Seaborg anymore, but she was for a couple of years. She actually started the 2-year indoor ag program over in technology and occupational sciences. But those folks are, well, all alums from us at some point, but they are, Chris and Renee, the cool thing about working with the Seaborg Math Science Center is they're doing all the professional development in STEM for in-service teachers. So when you go ask them for something, you're getting something that's brand new, right? Or has been tested, it's been validated, and they're able to incorporate it into your undergraduate practice. But Cameron, you've been at Seaborg for some really cool things, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you're using that learning with your students?
Absolutely. I think though some of the biggest assets for NMU education have got to be those folks with that last name of Stanford. I've had, Dr. Abby Cameron was my supervising teacher. I've had her for grad classes. She's been amazing. And then I've worked with Chris at the Seaborg Center a lot. I mean, I've been there. I don't know if the guy sleeps. It just seems like he always has opportunities for us. And I have a really hard time saying no to things. So he'll like shoot me emails. I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Like, include me. I'm here. I'm there. I mean, he's responsible, and it's important to realize how much the Seaborg Center is responsible for getting technology into not just Marquette, but all of the UP. And it's kind of like the behind the scenes look. Like in 2016, there was like $1 million grant that was awarded for the UP, and we were able to tap into that. Chris got us, and the Seaborg Center got us 3D printers that we were able to build. And since then, I've been able to build 3D printers with my students, not knowing anything about them going in. So I've had 3D printing opportunities. He also asked me to present at the National Science Teachers, or Michigan Science Teachers, not National, Michigan Science Teachers Conference, and which was a great opportunity to go down there. But then from there, the lesson that, or the presentation that he helped me develop kind of stood out. So there was a podcast that I was asked to be on. And then from that podcast, I was sent, I got a connection to go down to New Orleans to get even more science tech. And so without those little connections, you can just see how that spider web goes. And it's almost like not always that people know what's going on with that Seaborg Center and how much that they're really influencing the community and in general, just the UP and the teachers coming out of there. It's fantastic. Their College for Kids program is amazing. I can't say enough. That's awesome, Cameron. Andrew, here, school leader, and you're really good at it, by the way. I love working with you. Everything gets done, and it gets done at such a high level. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I agree. I think the connections that we all share with Northern are incredible. And you know what I love? I love that you can reach out to anyone there, and they're so passionate and excited. And even with you, I'll have an idea, and I'll say, hey, Joe, what do you think about this? Do you think we could do this for our teachers or our kids? And it's like, sure, how can we do it? Let's put a plan together. How can we support your kids? How can we support your teachers? And I think that's one of the most amazing things, that the educators there at Northern are so dedicated to what they're doing and to our schools in this community, that it comes through in everything that they do and how we all support one another. And I love that so many of my teachers and so many of our educators in this area went through Northern, because they have those connections. It's already there. They have those relationships built, and they bring that right into their classroom right away.
So that's making me think of when Dr. Melanie Reeves was here, and she's teaching in out in an ed prep program in Montana now. But I remember, doing some project-based learning with all of you, and that was a phone call. Let's do something. And I love that we get to play with ideas just like I got to play with ideas in middle school, right? Like it's not any different. It's just a different physical space, but all that washes away when you start partnering with each other, right? And I think that's just so exciting. Yeah,
absolutely. And when you're child-centered and you want to build a strong educational program, no matter what school you're at, and you have the backing for that, you can do so many things.
Yeah. Well, and Cameron, you mentioned, so the Michigan Science Teachers Association, going out to New Orleans, as my colleague reminds me how to say it, right? But in going to, the Ed Tech conferences, we just sent, it was virtual this year, but for the past 3 or 4 years, through Gabby Esagire's class, the Ed Tech course, which is so cool. We've got the instructional technologist for the Marquette Alger Intermediate School District who does this every day. She's bringing Gabby's bringing all the current technology to that classroom space, and then you get to connect that and it's real. But we've also used alumni funds. That's how in some ways, how we're using our alumni funds to send our teacher candidates to conferences, graduate students. They go to the reading conference, they all go to the special ed conference. They get access to that because we're using our alumni funds to support those things and then to buy kits. And, it's just so much fun. And Scott Seymour just put, everybody loves ED 483. I agree, Scott. I got to fit that into my schedule somehow, right? And then Dr. Kennedy's reminding me, we connected with a group that Dr. Kristen White connected us with through the Michigan Association of Middle School Principals. And we got to have a restorative justice training and embedded in ED 318 and ED 353, which is the reading 2 and the math method. So now those are pairing together and really looking how to support the social emotional learning for children. I mean, it's in the comments back from the moderator, we're like, holy mackerel, your teacher candidates were leading the conversations with these in-service teachers. Like that takes guts, it takes know-how, and it takes, I think, definitely quality instruction from our professors, but it takes the teacher candidate, the student, to be able to have to do it, right? And I think that's what we get in this community with how tight-knit it all is our students go in nervous, but they soon get over that, stop sweating through their shirts, right, when they're in front of children, and they just get to take over. And I think that's pretty cool, right? Very cool. So,
I was just going to say, it's very
Yeah.
unique. It's very unique to our community to have that strong of a network between the university, the local schools, the ISD. I mean, it's really amazing to see that everyone works together for the same goal.
Yeah. Well, in events like this, Andrea, I like how they connect people, reconnect people, and then to go teach overseas. I'll give a shout to Joe and Nancy Prinzi, who sponsor a scholarship for our candidates who want to student teach overseas. And one of the beautiful things about their scholarship is it's for people getting initial certification, and that's the priority. But it could also be used for one of our alums enrolled in a grad program who's teaching overseas, right? And so we get to connect back, and every graduate student we have in our program gives us another window into another classroom anywhere in the world, which helps us revise our programs. It's so cool, right? So, yeah. So Hannah, tell us about, using a pseudonym, of course, but like the impact that you think you've had on a student, or can you tell us about a student that has really wowed you or done something to really reinforce that you're on the right path with them?
Yeah, I've actually had a lot of those moments. I'm a very sentimental teacher. On my last day of the first half of my class with Dr. Lubig, we stood up and told everyone what we've learned, and I cried in front of everyone. So every moment I have with a student really reinforces that I'm meant to be here. But I actually today just got a note from a student. You know those little notes, and you'll just keep them forever. And I have it right here. I will read it.
Yes.
It's just a short 2 sentences. And she just brought it to my desk and she said, I made this for you.
What grade?
And it said, you're the best teacher. You are nice, kind, sweet, and caring. After college, you will be the best full-time teacher ever. I will miss you. And it's someone that I knew coming in, because, you talk with your mentor and they say, oh, Jody, let's call her. Jody is having a hard time. She's having a hard time with COVID, or something's happening at home. And so I make that, that extra step. I make the step with everyone, but I make that extra step to like reach my hand across and be like, I'm here for you and I want you to know that I care about you, kind of a thing. And so for her to tell me that after like I knew I was consciously working towards that was really magical, and it happened just today. So
That's awesome. Hey, so while we have you, Hannah, so those are the important things, right? That's part of your application portfolio. That note, that's a 5-minute conversation, easy, with the principal about you building relationships and students recognizing that. Could Chris Barron jumped on? He's student teaching out at over at Sandy Knoll in town. And can you tell us a little bit about the podcast that you were a part of? Because Chris was a part of that also, right?
yeah, CJ and I have a podcast together. We love teaching and we love talking about it. So we're like, okay, well, why don't we just record it and put it out there? So we just did a couple to test out the waters, and we took a break during winter break because we're like, we're not really experiencing anything right now. But we jumped back in just a couple weeks ago, and it just is a chance not only for us to like share our thoughts about education, just put it on a public platform, but also just for CJ and I to, I mean, he is like one of my best friends, but even to strengthen our bond as, you know, professional to professional. So we talk about different strategies, and we'll talk for like 2 hours about teaching before we hit record. So we're like just constantly sharing things with each other. And we're like, you know, sometimes every once in a while we say something good. So why don't we record this and put it somewhere?
Yes.
So yeah, we just started doing it and we have a lot of fun doing it. If you want to listen to it, shameless plug, it's everywhere you listen to podcasts. It's called Educating the World. We have a lot of fun doing it. And that's just another connection that I've made through NMU. CJ and I went to high school together, but we're not like connected socially at all until we were in the teaching program together.
So you should drop that link in the chat. Make sure you get it to all panelists and attendees. Yeah, drop that in there. And
Okay.
so let me, Cameron and Andrew, I'm gonna want the same thing from you. Like I'll give you a minute to think about it because I want to make a comment here, but think about, and if you could respond to, what have you done in your own learning that you brought to your students, right? Like I did this in my program or at professional development. I think my students could do this. So I'm just going to take this adult learning and put it in my classroom. So think about that for a minute. And while you're doing that, I want to say Ani Boujou to Ursula Peterson, right? Music Ed. So Miigwech for joining us. Ursula helps to lead the Native American Student Organization. They're really active in the community. So thanks for joining us. And Dr. Christy Edge would say, Hannah, who teaches our secondary literacy methods, that's just another form of text, right? Text doesn't always have to be print. It could be audio, visual, manipulatives, whatever it is, but she's really good at teasing out those spaces in our secondary ed program. So another amazing human being that we get to work with. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Edge. So Cameron or Andrea, like what have you learned? And then like, I think my students could do this. And because they know when you come back from PD or something, they all get that sense like, oh gosh, here we go. But what have you been able to put into your classroom from your own learning?
Well, I'm gonna talk about this a little differently. The program that I went through at NMU, as you mentioned, was the admin program as well as the ed specialist. So for my program, it was very much leadership based. And I was currently working as a school leader. And so the thing that I was able to just hold on to and really put into practice was learning a lot about who I am as a leader. We really worked on that a lot. And it goes beyond what you need to do as a leader and how you run a school, but it gets down to the soul of who you are and who you want to be as a leader. And I think that's something that I worked on for a long time in my program. I realized for myself that I am very much a servant leader. I am never going to ask my teachers or any of my stakeholders to do something that I wouldn't get in there and do my own self. So for me, you know, I try to bring that back to my teachers in any of our PD. Think about why you're here, what you want to, what you're doing here, what brought you to this point. Why did you want to become a teacher? And so for me going through my program, it was a lot about that. It was a lot about building relationships, building trust with your stakeholders, and really understanding who you are as a leader before you even begin interacting in that position.
That's awesome. So that's the whole mantra, right? How can you expect somebody else to do it if you're not willing to put yourself out there and do it on your own, right? Model it, right? That's awesome.
Exactly.
Cam, what do you think?
Oh, I've got a lot of examples that are in my brain. I'm trying to let one tumble out. So, I mean, are we talking just from my undergrad here at NMU, or I mean, one of the things that's really stuck with me as an educator for my undergrad was one of my professors at NMU when I was going through for my teaching degree. They talked about taking like dull subjects and making them interesting. And really what that equates to is that when you're up there, you're on stage, you're on, and you're the entertainer, and they're looking for you. You got to be a comedian, and then you've got to switch that to making it interesting. And that's really been how I try to make some of my lessons. And sometimes I'm sitting up late at night going, how am I going to make this interesting for my kids? I'm not saying I don't have dull lessons, because I do, or that not every kid is engaged, because that's just impossible. But what I'm trying to do is like, how can I make this relevant to kids? How can I make it interesting? How can I bring in that real world application? So a lot of these ties, which we see as basic, I feel like in some cases, I remember having great teachers that now looking back, that's exactly what they did. And then I have other teachers that were less memorable, and they probably didn't do those things. So just that kind of idea of, you are up there to do what a computer can't. Like, you are up there to make this stuff easy to learn and interesting. And that's, I mean, I've got more examples that are more tangible, but I feel like that one's almost at the heart of my teaching.
Well, and you all are getting back to just, it's the honesty and trust, right? And so the guy I student taught for, Ken Bullock at Bothwell Middle School, I'll never forget a lot of good things he told me. But one of them was, look, you're going to have boring lessons, and there's going to be things that you just have to do. But just tell the students that. Just tell them, hey, everybody, today we have to do this. It's not going to be very exciting, but we need to do it because it lays the foundation for these awesome things we get to do on Thursday and Friday. So this is what it is. We're going to take frequent breaks. I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to work in as many bad jokes as I can, but this is what we have to do, right? Because if we don't get this, then we can't do the other things. It's your knowing your scales for music. It's knowing your blocking for theater. It's knowing your warm-ups for any athletic. It's all those basic skills that you have to do. I guess the goal is, right, certainly not to make them do that for an hour every day, all the time. You've got to have some variety in there, right? And I guess, Chris Barron, CJ was asking, anything beneficial to forming relationships? Is it really, classroom specific? And the example he put in the Q&A was interest inventory. And I'd say, yeah, CJ, every day is an interest inventory. Reading expert teachers are really good at reading the room, knowing that you need to make an adjustment, that you need to make a break, that you need to give, here's examples for how you could do the assignment. And then that big category of other, pitch something to me. None of these excite you? Let me know what you want to do. I'm all in, tell me how you want to mix the ingredients, right? So I think it's knowing them. It's calling home and asking about them. It's talking to older brothers and sisters in the building, asking about them. Like, I don't know, I feel like in a lot of ways you're doing a match.com for, every day for every moment, and just trying to read the room. Cam, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I really like that, your topic about honesty. And I've had I've had lots of pre-service teachers coming into my room through the education program and through that Bothwell week that we do. And what I try to tell them is, listen, you got to be honest with middle schoolers, because if you're not, they're going to call you out on it. And then you're going to be sitting there. And I can't speak to high schoolers, but I'm assuming it's the same. You might be able to squeak by in some elementary grades, but basically, if you can be honest with your kids 80% of the time, they won't even think to ask about the other 20%. And they trust you and they build those relationships, and you never have to have those other conversations that are the behind the scenes things. And that really is like they just don't know they don't know to ask that. You're giving them enough and they feel full and they move on.
So Hannah, how are you getting feedback from your students or the families? Like how has your confidence grown, or what strategies have you really started to refine or implement to make that happen?
Well, I guess it's beneficial that I just had parent-teacher conferences. So that was helpful. But my mentor teacher sends out every so often. She, I think, did it for the end of her quarters, and I kind of just picked it up. She sends out a Google form to her kids, and I asked them informally in class, what did you think of this? Fist to 5. Was it the best lesson you've ever had, or I would never want to do this again, kind of a thing. But I've sent out a couple Google forms too to my students and be like, hey, what do you want to see? This is your class, and I want to lead it in the way that you want to learn it. So you tell me, what can I do better? What am I doing that you want me to keep? And so I'll keep that and then change some things or add something, take something away, replace. It's just a total learning curve, but I feel so ready. And I know that's because of the training that I had before I got here and the training I'm getting now.
Yeah.
I feel so ready to be a real teacher, even though I'm a real teacher now, just for free.
Right? Yeah. So do you let your students know that you're using their feedback?
100%. I tell them that you own this class.
Yeah.
This is your space. Well, it's our space, but I want it to be driven by you.
Yeah.
I want to do things that benefit you. If something's not working for this class, we'll change it.
Yeah.
If something is working, but it's not working for another class, I'll do the bending over. I definitely let them know. I take what you say to heart. And if you want me to change something and it's an overwhelming vote, I need you to change this, I'll change it. If one kid is like, oh, this doesn't really work for me, okay, let's sit down and talk about what does. So it's just constantly letting them drive. And if you give them that power, what I've found is they are so much more willing to do their piece. Just like you said at the beginning, you have to do that 51%. And then once you give in and give that to them, they're so quick to give you the other part that you're looking for. So I found it super easy to just let them kind of take charge, and I just kind of hold the flashlight at the front.
Yeah. Yeah. So Andrea, isn't that just the kind of person you want to hire? Somebody who can make themselves vulnerable to their students, but still keep the authority and the responsibility of the classroom. But then Hannah, I'm imagining when you talk about classroom management, and I'm not a big fan of that phrase. I hate the word management. It just sounds to me, but classroom leadership, I'm getting that you don't post rules, you have expectations, and expectations are built around collaboration, and they're always in draft form because they may need to change, right? How they look, how we get there, right? Yeah. So Andrea, what do you look for then when you want to hire somebody out of a program who's brand new to the profession, but still coming in with experience, right? Through the program itself. What are some things you prioritize as a school leader?
Sure. Well, first, let me just say to Hannah, I love everything that you said. I mean, you truly honor the children. It comes through in what you say and how you are teaching and educating them. And I think that's incredible. And I always tell my teachers, we can teach you the curriculum. We can teach you what the students need to learn. But what I cannot give you is the passion, the dedication, and I know that when a teacher comes in with that, it always shines through. It always does. You can tell. I've done enough interviews and met with enough teachers, and that you can tell that. And You know, we know, Hannah, that kids, when they're interested in something, when they're given choices in what they're learning and ownership of their learning, that they are going to be engaged. They are going to want to learn. And when you have teachers that say, you know what, I'm not the holder of all the knowledge. You are full of curiosity and you can do this, you can learn, and you do it more inquiry based. I think that's when you really hook those kids. And that's what I look for. I look for someone that is going to be passionate about what they do and maybe even think a little bit outside of the box.
That's awesome to hear, right? All right, Hannah. So we just did a whole practice interview with you and 42 other people. So that's pretty awesome, right? Yeah. And CJ's even giving you a thumbs up. So he's pretty proud of his co-host. So that's really cool, right? Folks, type in questions in the Q&A or put them in the chat. We'd be happy to answer most things you want to ask, I guess, right? We would be happy to answer. So we'll see. At middle school teacher, I think we have to qualify what kinds of questions we're supposed to ask, right? So Natasha Collins is on, and she's, I believe, in Virginia. And Natasha, I really liked your comment earlier about your bio, and you absolutely smashed the content exam, and you're really working on implementing the inquiry based as a key to science, which is great because it's all the next gen stuff. But folks, could you talk a little bit about, like, we have the experiences, the theory to practice, a lot of application, analysis, synthesis, content wise, like how did you feel coming out of your program content wise and being able to move into more complex content as you progress through your internships or into your career?
I'll jump on the question grenade there. This is when I came out of NMU. I mean, it's impossible to have all of the knowledge that you're going to need going in. I mean, that's just an impossible task. So did I step into my teaching profession knowing everything about the science and the social studies and the computers that I was going to be teaching? No, but what I did have was I had the know-how to learn how to figure that out. Like, I had the best teaching practices that were taught to me, and I had the blueprint. I mean, I even still use the lesson plan that I developed in for my formal lesson plans back in undergrad. And so when we're talking about, did I have all of the skills necessary for the job that I was doing? Yes and no. I didn't know the answers to all the content I was teaching, but I did know how to, like, structure that content. And finding those and how to make it interesting, just then looking up the content was part of that first year of teaching when you don't sleep.
Yeah, amen. Right. And that hasn't changed in my job right now. In this position, it's they equated a lot to parenting. Like, here's a kid, get after it, right? So you better start asking questions and know who to ask. So Andrea, as you network, Tony Barnes is on, and Tony's one of my favorite human beings. He's taught out in Texas. He was local here. He was a graduate assistant. He spent some time up in the Huron Mountain Club working as a keeper, and he's just a really neat human being. But he was asking a little bit about, then, if you can't come in with all the knowledge, which is impossible, how do you build your networks? Like, how do you prioritize who to go after, what groups to go after first, or is it more organic? Like, how does that work as a school leader?
Well, that's a great question. Really, I think it starts internally first. You know, you're only as good as the members of your team. So building a strong administrative team is key to running a successful school. And beyond that, then, you know, there are so many opportunities in our community, and with Marisa, our ISD, there are principal groups, there are superintendent groups, there are so many connections to be made at NMU that it's quite easy in this community to build a network. We all work so closely in so many ways that I can call any of the principals or any of the superintendents or send them a text and ask them a quick question and know that they will get back to me promptly and honestly. And that's huge. That's something that you don't find in every community.
Yeah, that is, we are very fortunate in our positions here in the School of Ed that we get to attend the monthly Michigan Association of School Administrators Region 1 meeting. That's all the UP superintendents, and the Upper Peninsula Center for Educational Development meetings, which are all the ISD superintendents, the 7, and our community college partners, and Lake State, and Michigan Tech, and the tribal colleges when they attend. And that is an absolute gift. Like there's no hierarchy in what we have for our network. And I think having those really blurred lines just makes it that much easier. I'll go back to what Hannah said. I get to make myself vulnerable in a meeting and, ask Dr. Deanne from Marisa or call, Mr. Leisenring from, Delta and say, hey guys, here's where I'm at. I need some help. I was confused by, I really want to do this. I want to do it right. Can you give me some mentorship on this, right? And for that matter, I can call any of our alums, older than me, younger than me, it doesn't matter, because we're going after the same professional goals and all the age stuff kind of washes away, right? So Hannah, I'm going to throw this one to you then, because CJ was asking, how do you partner or get maybe a new idea as a young teacher? Have you had to do this yet? Because I know Cameron has an answer for this too. But how do you get like a new idea? You're the new kid on the block. How do you get something new tried when you have veteran teachers who they're not stuck in their ways, but they have all this experience and they've got all these things that work and they work well because they've been there for 30 years and the kids love them and the families request them. So how do you put yourself in that, like, hey, can we try this? Or how does that work?
For me, I have done this. It's a mix of confidence and vulnerability. I've made myself a very prominent member of my PLC meetings with my math and science teams, whether that be me constantly raising my hand to ask questions because I got thrown into a science position and I'm a math major, or it's me saying, hey, I did this. It was so fun. You should try it. I put all the resources I made in our group on Schoology. So I just did an activity where we used geoboards, and I got this idea from Dr. Kennedy to play Battleship to model graphing on the coordinate plane. And they would flip their boards around to change the axes to be in different quadrants. And so I went to every teacher on my floor, and I didn't just say it in the meeting. I went to their rooms, brought a geoboard with me, and I said, look how cool this is. And the kids loved it so much that the next day during their free time, when they usually get to, free read, write, draw, you can play on the math approved websites that I have on their Schoology page, they asked me if they could play Battleship again. So it's like, here, you have to try this. Your kids are going to love it. And not only that, they are going to ace the one short practice on graphing on the coordinate plane that you give them. Like, they're mastering it. And so I think it's just a mix of knowing that I am valid and I have good ideas, even if I am new, but also being vulnerable enough to like stand up. I don't know, for lack of better terms, stand up and be like, hey, I know that it's easy to put a grid paper under the projector, but this is so cool. And I think even if you don't try it, here's the resources just in case maybe next year you want to give it a go. Like, here's what I did. If you want to take it, take it. If you don't, I guess that's your choice.
So it sounds like you're working with your peer group and your mentor group in the same way that you work with your students.
100%.
Right? The age doesn't matter. You're treating people like human beings, demonstrating your passion for learning, showing them what you did, and I would imagine then open to critique or other people's stories about how they've used it, right? Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Cameron, did you want to add anything onto that?
I just think it's really about making yourself accessible for people. I'm not an expert in really any of the technology areas, but I do have quite a few other teachers coming to me now, ask me, hey, do you know how to do this? And sometimes it's like, I don't have no idea, way over my head. But other things like, you know what, maybe we can probably try to figure this out. and then just taking the time to answer questions, and then asking them the questions too, like, oh, hey, what is this for? How did you apply this? And really like certifying, like, hey, you've got some great ideas here. Maybe we just want to like 21st centuryize it. Maybe we can add it to the computer. And that's really what this year's been all about, is taking all of our older lessons and making them more digitized and more interesting. But I think just hearing what these veteran teachers have to say, and I enjoyed my mentorship that first year, and just hearing about like all of the stories, and hey, we used to do this, and then seeing those, and then bringing components of that into my classroom. Teachers are pretty competitive, and so when we hear that you've got a good activity, I want to do better. And when kids are talking about your lesson and not mine, at least for me, I'm a competitive guy. So when they're talking about your lesson and not mine, I'm a little ticked at myself. Particularly if we're teaching the same subject, like, oh shoot, you did that better than me. Which, teaching with Jennifer Topolki, that happens a whole lot. She's an excellent teacher. So I'm like constantly, I'm at least in competition. I don't think she's in competition with me, but just working with each other and trying to take other components and then building on it, and then sharing back those resources. Because at the end of the day, we really do have the same goals.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Kylie, I guess I'll close with saying this is, first, thank you everybody for attending. Our faculty who are online, alumni, current students, friends, it's awesome. Members of the alumni board. It's so amazing to have you here. And again, we're really proud of our program. We're absolutely honored to be the oldest program on campus, but I also think one that is not afraid to flex or to morph when we need to. And I think we listen to our current students and our alumni really well, and we take their feedback seriously, as well as the schools that we partner with. But I think one of the coolest things and one of the greatest strengths of our program is that we get non-traditional and traditional students in the same learning spaces. And then we have so many alums in the local schools and a network around the world where we can place current students with them for the experience. And again, they're not stuck in, this is the way we did it. They're very open to, okay, how are we doing this now? How have the evaluations changed? What are you bringing? And again, I'll lean on my cooperating teacher. It was, the first interview was, I expect to learn something new from you. I expect you to come in here and teach me something, or to show me something that you've learned. And I think our whole program is like that. And I know Cameron Bancroft, Andrea Ballard, Hannah Moberg are three among so many that model that very thing for their students, their teachers, instructional aides, custodians, bus drivers, kitchen staff, volunteers, and families. And it's key to what we do. Building those relationships and sustaining them, it's what makes us human. And I know it's what makes our program strong, and really helps us all develop people to teach like a wildcat. Thanks for joining us. Kylie, I hope we did you proud.
You did. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I see John just posted in the Q&A, is there a plan to do panels like this with an option to be in person when we can, which I think is a great idea. We started this digital event series. Obviously, it came out of COVID, but something that we're going to continue to do. So we're going to have these digital events every single month. But I think that having these in person when we can as well would be a great idea for our alumni to get together. So yes, keep your eyes and ears open. And I know as soon as we can all get together, I'm sure we all will be very antsy to do so. So thank you all very much, Dr. Lubig, Andrea, Cameron, Hannah. Thank you. You guys, this was a great conversation. I loved seeing all of the activity in the chat. I feel like this is the most activity we've had in the chat of all of these events that we've done. So I love seeing people get involved. Just a couple of quick reminders to check our website, nmu.edu/alumni, for all of our upcoming digital events. And also we'll be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow that has a link to this whole entire program in case you miss any parts of it or would like to share with any colleagues. And then also a short survey for you to fill out and let us know if there's anything that you'd like to see come out of these digital events. We also will be choosing one person who who attended this evening to win an alumni t-shirt. So keep your eye on that as well. And follow us on social media, keep track of things. We always love hearing from our alumni, and we always love connecting everyone. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here, and we will see you all again soon.